Hi there, I'm Amy and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm building another Animal Crossing inspired speed build in The Sims 4, and this time it's for my favourite villager from New Horizons, Sherb. He's a little blue goat that was new to the latest installment of Animal Crossing. I'll pop a picture up on screen of him. He actually ended up being one of the first villagers that I had in New Horizons, and I really love him. He's just so cute, and I thought it would be fun to make a house for him today. I have actually made one for Sherb in the past. That was quite a while ago now, at least a year ago or something. But this one's quite different to that. And it does use a lot of the pastel pop kit, which at the time was the main inspiration for it, since he does have a lot of pastel colours throughout. So you'll see that becoming quite a theme. And I went for building in Brindleton Bay for this. I thought a lot of the colours from the items in the cats and dogs pack worked really well. Here I've got a couple of columns, both from growing together and then cats and dogs, just because I was trying to figure out which type of blue I wanted to use. But I ended up going with this one from cats and dogs, which I think looks really nice and it suits the world quite well. I ended up using a lot of the assets from that pack as well, which isn't something that I go for quite a lot, so it was nice to use something different. I tried to make the build quite beach inspired as well, since it's on the lot, which is quite close by to the sea. It's actually just a 20 by 20 lot, but I felt like it seemed a little bit small for some reason. I think this was a decent sized house in the end, though, and there is a good back garden space, which I really desperately wanted to use the cozy camper kit for, so I managed to fit that in a few places, just because Sherb is one of the lazy villagers in the game. So I thought having the tent from that kit outside with a sleeping bag so he could just snooze during the day or sleep out in the stars seemed like quite a cute idea. Also, his hobby from New Horizons is nature, so again, it felt like he'd probably be outside quite a bit of the time, so that seemed to suit quite well. And now I've just about got the main structure of the build sorted, so I'm adding a few windows in now. Again, most of these just come from the cats and dogs pack, but that bay window in the front is from cottage living. I thought it suited quite well and it gave a bit more interest to the front of the build since it felt quite flat. You might also notice a sim in the corner of the lot just to the far front left. I thought it might be fun to make my own little Sherb to playtest a bit later, so in these screenshots he does feature within that. For the floor plan, that came together quite quickly, which I was happy about. I initially couldn't work out where to put the stairs, but they ended up working well here, and there is a bit of a small room as a result, but I didn't want to make the main bedroom any smaller just because it would be quite a weird shape. So I ended up having that as more of a guest room, hobby room for Sherb in the end. It ends up having a bunk bed and one of the those pet items from the My First Pet stuff. It's quite a controversial pack, but I quite like the game feature of having those little pets. So I added it in, and again, Sherb is quite into nature, so it felt like it worked well. And since he's one of the lazy villagers, he also often talks about bugs in his house, so having like a hedgehog or a rat in the game seemed quite fitting in that way. And I often like to include placement furniture in my builds just so I can get an idea of where I want everything to be laid out. So it helps with placing windows. So in that sense, don't worry about the furniture that I picked out because that's not going to be staying there. That is just placement furniture. Now I'm just adding a few extra details to the outside of the build, including planter boxes and these little roof pieces to help support the roof. Before adding in the backyard, I ended up using this white picket fence from the backyard stuff pack again. It's one of my favourite fences and I think it looks really cute here. Since there's so much blue going on with the house too, I quite like how it breaks that up rather than using the blue fence from cats and dogs across the rest of the space. And then on this left side of the build, I was a bit unsure what to do here since it's quite just a plain wall, so I ended up using these trellises from the high school years expansion pack and just adding in a few flowers. They do change to pink a bit later on, but I quite like the yellow at first. It's just I ended up using a lot of pink flowers around the place when I landscape later on, so I updated those in line with that. Back inside now, and I started working on the kitchen first. There were a few countertops that I wanted to use. I couldn't decide between them for a while, but I ended up using this one from Parenthood. I don't usually use this one very often just because the overhead cabinets, the little windows in them are always blue no matter the swatch. So I feel really limited a lot of the time to having to make the kitchen blue when I use them. Obviously, in this build, that wasn't a problem since that's exactly what I was going for. Another reason why I figured I'd use it here since I don't use them very often anyway. Might as well incorporate them when I can. But I just find that a bit of a shame. I think the Sims team do it just to help reduce load on the game though, because if they put actual windows in, it uses a bit more power for the computer. So that helps it run on lower spec PCs, but that's my guess anyway. I just don't massively like how it looks. And then with the kitchen, the layout does change a bit shortly, just because I ended up taking a couple of windows out to be able to have um, the oven go up against a wall and then have the extractor fan above it. I thought that looked a bit nicer, and then I managed to get in some more storage for Sherb here. Not necessary for gameplay, but I think it looks more realistic that way. I was also quite undecided on the clutter, so it changed quite a bit. But I ended up going with pretty much this, just adding in a few chopping boards and plants around to make it look a bit more homey. I also added in a few bookshelves into the corner space under the far right cabinet, just as if they were cookbooks that Sherb might be using. I don't think they're otherwise functional from a gameplay perspective. Since I alt placed them, I don't believe your Sims would be able to reach over and grab a book from there, but I do include bookshelves elsewhere in the build, so they can still read in this. After a few final touches, including this hanging plant, I'm just going to pop under the stairwell, and I decided to incorporate kind of a custom shelving unit here. I've seen some people do this on videos that I watch of people who play The Sims, and I thought it was a really cute idea. I did cut out me putting the clutter on it though, just because I ended up adding the closed version of that little boxed unit at the bottom, and it was just a bit glitchy while I was doing that, so I figured I wouldn't put you through having to watch that back. Now onto the dining area. It's fairly simple. I just added these ghost chairs from the My Wedding Stories pack, which I think are really cute, and I liked how simple they were. The fruit bowl also seemed quite useful for Sherb, since again, being one of the lazy villagers, he's always talking about snacks and food, so he can easily grab a snack from there. And then into the living area, I used this rug from Horse Ranch. It just felt very beachy, which I quite liked, and it had the colours of Sherb incorporated into it. And then I grabbed the sofa and armchair from the Book Nook kit and added in the little poof from, I think it was Snowy Escape. And then using these side tables again from the Growing Together expansion pack. I liked the blue glass in that wood again, which is why I used it here. And these cushions that I've just added, one of those is from the Modern Luxe kit, that's the pink one. And then you might have noticed how I jumped into the gallery in order to download the other one, which I used the yellow swatch for. That was actually one of the items from that latest update where you had to log in a certain number of days to be able to access certain items. And I was really annoyed about that. And I think a lot of people reflect similar feeling about that event because I did log in all of those days, but it didn't give me the pop-up to remind me to claim the items. So even though I unlocked them, it wouldn't let me claim them after a certain amount of time. So I could just see them sitting there unlocked, but I couldn't get them, which was really upsetting. And that was one of the ones that I didn't get as a result. So you can find the items that people have uploaded to the gallery and you can just grab them there, which is what I've started doing. But it is a bit annoying and you can't do that with the CAS items, I don't think. After just adding a few clutter pieces to the living area, I'm jumping into the downstairs bathroom. This is just a toilet and then laundry that I put in here. Again, I didn't put in a dryer at first just because I didn't like how they looked stacked up together and there wasn't enough space to put them separately. But in the end, while I was playtesting, I realised how annoying it is, especially in Brindleton Bay where it rains a lot, so you can't actually hang your clothing outside very often. So I ended up adding that in. I don't show it on camera, but you will see it in the screenshots. So the shelves that I've added here with the clutter, the shelves go away and then I put some of the clutter on top of the dryer in the end. I did have to remove some of it though, just because it looked like a bit much on top of the dryer, but otherwise it stays pretty much the same. And in this little high school years rack that I included, I put one of the messy versions of the items from the bathroom clutter kit because again, I felt like it fitted Sherb's personality quite well since he is a lazy character, so I don't think cleaning up is particularly on his mind most of the time. I really love it when the Sims team do that actually, where they give you like a nice version of something and then a slightly more rundown version. It really helps with being able to build specific kinds of decor styles, so hopefully they keep that up in the future too. And just adding some blinds in the space, and I'll be popping upstairs into the other bathroom. I used the same decor again, so the same tiles from the kitchen and the downstairs bathroom. But I thought this little cookie rug was quite cute. So that's from the Pastel Pop kit, which again I end up using in the bedroom quite a lot. And I thought that looked really cute here and matched the orange in the tiles on the wall. I also thought that this wood swatch from the Dream Home Decorator items worked really well with those tiles, so I made sure to include those here. And again, they were very pastel coloured, and I think the inside of Sherb's ears are that sort of orangey yellowy colour, so that was where that kind of got inspired from. But otherwise, there's not too much clutter here, just quite a bit from the bathroom clutter kit. Again, I don't think that's everyone's favourite kit, to be honest, especially with some of the items look quite low spec, but I really like using it. It just makes cluttering up bathrooms so much easier, I find. So I use it in almost all of my builds, to be honest. And again, just grabbing one of the messy versions of the towels here to put above the bath. And with that, I'll be heading on over into the hallway, which is quite simple. It's very small, so there's not a lot of space to actually include much here. I did originally try to put this bookshelf, but I ended up going for the little side table from the Laundry Day stuff pack, I believe it was. It had quite a nice blue accent to it, which you'll see shortly when I grab that out. And I ended up using this same wallpaper from the Pastel Pop kit just because it felt like the perfect colour for Sherb. So even though it's in pretty much all of the house, I figured I might as well pull it through into this hallway area too. And so here's that Laundry Day side table I was mentioning. And I just included a few basic clutter items on top of that, including this little moon lamp, which I think is from the Growing Together pack. That's a really cute item. And since Sherb is quite cutesy, I thought it would work really nicely with him, even though I think it's meant to be a nightlight for kids, but I quite liked it there. And into the bedroom, I tried to use as much of the Pastel Pop kit as I could, just because all of the items felt really suitable for this style. Also, don't mind the tool mod that I'm using. It looks a bit weird. Again, I haven't updated one of my mods. It's probably UI Cheats extension, so that's why the menu looks a bit odd. But I found the Pastel Pop Kit bed swatch that I ended up going with matched really well with these dresser and side table units from high school years. So I was really pleased with those, and again, they're the perfect colour for Sherb. I also managed to squeeze in a desk area here since there's not an office or any space around the house. I suppose that smaller room to the side you could probably use as an office, but I end up making that a spare bedroom instead. And there was enough room in this main bedroom, so I thought it would be a good idea to include. I'd actually be really curious to know what your favourite villager from Animal Crossing is, so be sure to let me know in the comments down below, and you never know, I might be inspired to build a house for them one day and upload that to the channel, so it would be fun to hear your thoughts on that. I was also relieved when it was either the DLC or the last update for Animal Crossing New Horizons where it brought the ability to be able to decorate the interior of your villagers' houses. I was so happy because I really like Sherb, but I got him early on in the game where his house is just the default lazy villager swatch. So it's got the dirt floor and really horrible looking furnishings. And since he's a pastel blue goat, it just didn't feel like it worked very well with his aesthetic. So I was really happy when I was able to redecorate that. And I think the color scheme I went for is basically what I'm doing in this bedroom right now. So that was really fun. I like that update. It's such a shame that they've stopped updating that game, but hopefully it means there'll be another one coming out at some point soon. But based on the time between the release of Animal Crossing New Leaf and then New Horizons, probably not anytime soon, which is kind of a shame. Just cluttering up the space now, I added this little item of clothes that have been strewn on the floor. Again, that's also from high school years. I used quite a lot of that pack here since it had a lot of pastel colours as well, which went really well with the Pastel Pop kit. But since they were a messy item, it felt suitable again for Sherb. I don't actually play that much with the high school years pack anymore, just because often I find myself not wanting to have to go to school with them, so I usually just send them alone now. But I love the assets from the packs, so I don't regret getting it at all. I think it's really fun. And to be honest, it's nice once in a while to be able to join going with the teenagers to school, so I don't think it's a bad pack by any means. Adding a few more clutter pieces onto this bookshelf since it felt quite empty. I do really like that about some of the bookshelves in the game though, because it allows you to mix it up a bit and make it a lot more unique each time, being able to add your own clutter. And I also included the laundry basket here, and I added in this little basket for knitting just because it seemed like quite a fun hobby for Sherb to have. And then into the spare room. This doesn't have too much in it. Again, it's very tight space, so I didn't have much room to be able to put a lot. But I did put a bunk bed and a dresser, so Sims can stay over if they want when they're visiting Sherb. And then I thought it would be cute to have this, well, it's not a skill building item, just an activity, I suppose. But the small animal unit that came from my first pet stuff, where you can buy like a rat or something. I think I mentioned that earlier in the video, but I thought that would be fun to include. It's not something I often play with, but I do quite enjoy it when I have it. I think there is still a bug in the game regarding that though, where sometimes the game just thinks that the pet has died even though it hasn't, and then your Sims seem to get a moodlet of having their baby whisked away, which is really odd. So I don't know if that's fixed, but that might be an annoying thing that you want to replace if you do end up downloading this house. Speaking of which, you can find this build on the EA gallery just under my user ID, AWayfaringFrog. I did also build a house for Sherb quite a while back, as I mentioned previously, so that's also on there if you were interested. It's more of a cottage style. And now jumping into the back garden area. As I mentioned, I really wanted to use a lot of the cozy camper kit, so I added that in here. And I thought the colours worked again really well since there were a lot of pastel swatches in that pack. I also really liked the swing set. I think that was from that cozy camper kit as well, actually. There's a few swing sets now, so I get mixed up with which one's from where. And then I used this little sleeping bag from the Growing Together pack. Or that might have been from Horse Ranch. I've forgotten, we've got a couple now. And I don't use them very often, so I sort of muddle myself up with where they come from. And then the Riviera Retreat kit also had some great pastel colours, so I made sure to include that in here. And since Sherb is really into gardening as his hobby within the games in Animal Crossing, I added in a few plants or boxes around for him to be able to do that. So I ended up adding in a lot of activities and skill building items within this build, which I was really happy with. It's one of the main things I try to do when I build, just because otherwise it can be quite boring to play, I find. And having to travel to different lots quite regularly can get really frustrating, especially if you've got a lot of Sims in your household, so I wanted to avoid that where I could. And now onto landscaping. I tried to pick out a few items that seemed like they'd fit in here, so a few of the trees that are in Brindleton Bay already. I just scaled a few of the trees with the tool mod again, with the horrible menu that it's got at the moment, but again, that's not the tool mod, that's just some conflicting mod that I've got. If you play with mods, do you also find yourself just not getting around to updating them very regularly, or is that just me? I try not to use too many mods because of that, but ever since I got like UI Cheats extension, MC Command Center, and now Tool and Better Build By, I just don't think I could live without them, so I need to make sure I actually update them, otherwise it's probably going to get even worse. For the landscaping, I used quite a lot of base game in this, including the lavender plants that you can get. These bushes that I've lined the fence with as well work really well. They're quite easy to stack on top of each other without it looking too weird. So I made sure to include those. And then these hydrangeas, I believe they are. I really like those plants and they come in quite a few colours. There's even more in the debug version, I believe, but I think I just used the one from the normal catalogue here since they had the colours I wanted. And as you can see, since they're quite pink, that's why I ended up changing the flowers growing up against the side of the wall to pink as well, just because then it matched a bit better. And then I moved around some of the back garden furniture to be able to fit in another kind of little planter area here, just to bring in some more colour to the back garden. And because it's a bit of a funny shape, kind of snaking around the side of the building, it was quite tight here anyway, so it felt like a good use of the space to just fill it with plants. And again, since Sherb is really into gardening, at least that's all he ever does in my game, it felt quite suitable for that. I did cut out a bit of the landscaping I did, but you might be able to see now as I'm just doing the pathing here that I added in quite a few of these other green bushes. I think they're from the Cats and Dogs pack, which is where this world is from, and they look really nice. I don't use them that often, and I don't know why, because they're really cute, so I might try and start doing those a bit more in my builds. I also think the windy path that I added looks quite cute. It's something that I generally try to do to make it look a bit more interesting. Hopefully I don't end up with the terrain glitch though, where every time you load into the lot, all of the terrain paint disappears, because that's such a pain. I really hope they fix that soon. I don't think it happened to me on this lot, thankfully, while I was building. I also used terrain paint to add a bit of dirt under the flower areas and then just to go around the sides of the house and fences. I think it just somehow makes it look a bit more realistic and it gives it a bit more dimension. It's kind of a shame as well that this is built in Brindleton Bay because there's so many nice activities to do outside that I've put in here, but again, through my experience with gameplay in that world, it just rains all the time. So you might want to invest in a weather machine if you decide to download this and play in it. But otherwise you could just pop the lot on in a different world. That would make life a lot easier. But this just felt like the right lot for this kind of house when I started building, which is why I put it here. And again, because I was going for a bit of a beach vibe, but without the tropical part of that, this felt like the perfect lot to include it on. We're now coming to the end of the speed build portion of this video, so if you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll be notified of when I next upload a video. You can also download this build using my EA ID on the Sims 4 gallery, which is just AWayfaringFrog. And as before, if there's any builds you'd like to see me create on the channel, be sure to let me know in the comments. Thanks again, I hope you enjoyed the screenshots and have a great rest of your day.